All right, after a short break, we are back in session. We are moving to the next item, which is item 5D. The clerk will read.
D is an update on the Hotel Topeka at City Center.
City Manager.
Chief Financial Officer Freddie Malwin will conduct this discussion, and what Freddie is going to do is give you an overview of where we're at with the hotel, where we think we're going. And throughout this discussion, we need your feedback on this. Freddie, you might introduce Jeff for those who don't know.
Will do, sir. Thank you. So next to me is Mr. Jeff White from Columbia Capital. Jeff and I will going to be briefing you on today's update regarding the hotel. So good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. This evening, I would like to provide you with an update of the Hotel Topeka. I would like to brief you on a few things. One, some key statistics. Two, some recent operating history, the status of the acquisition, and the current actions that the city has taken. Jeff White will discuss the Great Hospitality Study with you. So regarding some key statistics of the hotel, the property was constructed in 1997. It has 224 rooms in a courtyard style. This is a full-service hotel, which includes a restaurant. It has a conference facility and an ample parking space. There are no flags or brand present at the hotel, and the hotel has been under court-appointed receivership since June 2021. Regarding the operating history, the hotel showed operating losses of $207,000 in 2022 and $250,000 in 2021. It appears that the hotel has not funded replacement reserves since at least 2019, which increases the likelihood of deferred maintenance. Now, regarding the status of the acquisition, the city submitted the winning bid at foreclosure auction in early June for $7.5 million plus costs and prorations. The city executed a purchase agreement within a few days following the auction, and it was not subject to negotiation. The city continues to work with the seller's agent to complete the entire transaction. And finally, the closing on the property is expected to be early September and not July 31st anymore. But the entire transaction depends upon court approval. So my last topic is the actions that the city of Topeka has taken regarding the property. So there are two actions. One, the city deployed an RFP for a building system assessment, which the purpose is to identify the status of key building systems such as roofing, elevators, A&P, HVAC, etc., with recommendations for improvement or replacement. The RFP is currently closed, and the city team is reviewing and assessing the responses. The award for this RFP can be given as early as next week, pending city's manager's approval. Lastly, the second action that the city have taken is an RFP for an asset manager. The purpose of the asset manager is to engage a third party to assist the city in making strategic and tactical decisions regarding the hotel. This includes identifying and negotiating with a flag, evaluating the renovation strategy, and securing an operator. This RFP closes tomorrow, July the 19th. So we would expect probably about maybe 1 or 2 more weeks before we will have a final decision regarding that. And with that, I'll pass it to Jeff.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the council, Jeff White with Columbia Capital Management. A few months ago, visit Topeka. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. A few months ago, Visit Topeka commissioned a third-party independent market and feasibility study related to the Hotel Topeka that was conducted by a company called Gray Hospitality Consulting. That report looked at the history of the hotel, the history of the Topeka hotel market, and provided specific recommendations with respect to what a renovation strategy should look like for this particular asset. So some key findings from that report. The first was that the city should redevelop this hotel to what's called a 3-diamond level of AAA standards, and as a full-service hotel. It projected a mix of different types of folks that would use the hotel. Roughly 1 out of 5 would be retail transient travelers, i.e. I'm driving down I-70, I'm tired, I need a place to stay. 1 out of 5 would be corporate accounts. Roughly 1 out of 3 would be social or leisure travelers, so folks may be coming to visit family or coming to see the zoo or the state capitol or Brown versus Board site. And then the balance would come from group events. The Gray study recommended keeping the current 224-room size of the hotel, and it indicated the city should target to reopen the hotel after renovations in 2025, and it would take a couple years to reach stabilization. Stabilization simply means that it sort of reaches the level of occupancy and rental rates that would be stasis in the market going forward. The study was pretty direct about the level of quality that the city should target. There's a company called Smith Travel Research, which gathers hotel data for most hotels around the United States. They publish lots of research. They have this thing called a hotel chain scale that sort of rates hotels from luxury down to economy. And the category they're recommending that the city target with respect to the renovated Hotel Topeka is the quote-unquote upscale category. And that the property be full service. What does that mean? It simply means that there's day-long food service operations. So a restaurant that's open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner probably provides catering services to conference facilities, maybe provides room service. So we're talking about something more than the free breakfast that runs till 9 on a weekday morning. With that implementation strategy, Gray projected that based upon other similar projects in the city, that we could expect to see stabilized occupancy at or near 60%, with average daily rates at about $130 a night by 2027, which is, again, the stabilization date. It also provided a financial pro forma, looking at what the hotel could be expected to generate in revenues, what it could be expected to spend, and expenses to manage that. And it projected that the net income of the hotel would be about 17% of total revenues at that point. However, the study punted on the calculation of property taxes. And property taxes for this property, based upon the next finding they had, which is the value at completion, would be about 10% of stabilized operating revenues. So really what we're talking about is, after reserves, about 7% operating margin for this hotel. It projected top-line revenues at stabilization of just north of $10 million. So we're talking about a $700,000 operating margin is what they projected at stabilization, and that's going to be an important data point when we talk about capacity for borrowing. The Gray study projected, based upon national comps, that the completed hotel would have a market value for tax purposes of $26 million. We actually looked at other comps in the market, and we think that's right on the money, based upon looking at Cyrus, Spring Hill, those types of other similar category hotels. Gray indicated that if we were to build this hotel new today at upscale, that we could expect to pay $244,000 per key or per room. So you simply do the math: 224 rooms, $244,000 a room. You get to $55 million for a total development cost. We, of course, are not building this from scratch. The building exists today, but it's a 25-year-old building. As Freddie mentioned, we know for a fact, based upon the diligence that was provided by the auction agent, that there have been no funded maintenance reserves at the hotel for at least 5 years. So we're presuming that many systems are probably in pretty significant need for replacement. Freddie mentioned the RFP for systems assessment. We'll know that here over the next, hopefully 2 months or so. So Gray indicated that it felt that the city needed to be prepared to spend around $20 million in addition to the acquisition price to renovate this hotel, to get it to a level where it believes is necessary to be successful in the market. The Gray study also looked at the consequences of what would happen if the city built it to a lower standard. And so it created a comparison set of hotels in the city called a primary comparison set, a secondary comparison set. Primary comparison set, again, is in that upscale or upper mid-scale new hotel. And that comparison set in 2022 had 66% occupancy, average daily rates, and again, remember, Gray projected roughly 60% for Hotel Topeka. Average daily rates at about $118. Gray projected by 2027, $130 for our hotel, which produced top-line revenue of about $6.3 million. If we look at the secondary set of comparables, 1 or 2 steps lower in quality, that group on average was producing about half the top-line revenue. So a pretty small step down in quality can translate into a pretty big step down in room night revenue, according to the study. So that leaves us looking at a number of key decisions, and a lot of these are intertwined and unfortunately a little bit iterative because one relies on the outcomes of the other. So one of those is what happens to the operating status of the hotel after the city acquires it. And there's lots of pros and cons, and Amanda and her team are doing a significant amount of research currently on a number of items that will impact that. I will say that there's really sort of 4 things maybe that are weighing on our research here. So the first is one that has to do with the timing of the renovations and the cost of the renovations. So it's actually 1 and 2 out of my 4. So is it quicker and is it less expensive to renovate an asset that's not currently being operated versus one that's currently in operation? My suspicion is yes, but that's something that we're going to have to explore. Another question is whether renovating under operation is going to impair our ability to secure a hotel flag. By the way, that was one key finding of Gray that I didn't mention. Hotel Topeka is an independent hotel. It's not affiliated with a Hilton or a Wyndham or something like that. The Gray study was pretty direct in indicating that we needed to seek out a hotel flag. And our own independent research, we did a literature review looking at are independent hotels able to be as successful as branded hotels? And the answer is yes, if you're in the luxury category sometimes. For every other category, the answer is no. Generally speaking, branded hotels do better. So that's the third. And then the fourth point is the simple economic reality that this hotel has not made money in a number of years. On average, the operating losses over the last 2 years have been about $15,000 a month, but those monthly operating losses have been as high as $150,000. As we look at the calendar, those losses tend to be highest in the winter and early spring months. So we are getting to the point in the calendar where the hotel will have seen its best performing months and entering a period where it will see its historically worst performing months. And if we decide to keep it open and fund those operating losses, obviously we've got to find a funding source to do that after we acquire the hotel. The next category of items we're looking at is the ownership and operation structure. And this is a conversation we had, about 6 weeks ago at this point, right ahead of the auction, where we looked at that spectrum of fully private versus fully public, and then a couple stops in the middle, including one that had public ownership but contracted private operation. And the key determination there, really in my mind, given the expected performance of the hotel, is how do we take the expected net operating revenue from that hotel and produce the most leverage from that in order to generate proceeds available to do the renovations that we need to get this hotel into that upscale category. And as you can imagine, a city government that can borrow on a tax-exempt basis with a AA credit rating for a longer period of time than most banks would be willing to extend credit is going to be able to leverage those same dollars a lot further than someone who is borrowing on a taxable basis on the credit of the asset itself, probably, and on a much shorter term basis, and maybe on a variable rate basis in a market that is pretty painful for variable rate borrowings today. So that, in my mind, sort of causes us to lean toward the public ownership contracted operation model, and we talked about this back in June. We have an example of that with the Overland Park Sheraton, which is operated using that structure. And again, the city used a subsidiary agency called Overland Park Development Corporation to issue tax-exempt bonds to support that project. And then the last item really is one that I've touched on a couple times, which is, do we follow the recommendations of Gray and renovate this to the upscale category with full service offerings, meaning a restaurant, and suffer the cost that it's going to take to get there? Or do we think there's an opportunity to have success here with a lower cost plan? And that, I think, we've got a bit of time to figure out, and hopefully we'll be able to use the expertise of that asset manager that Freddie mentioned. The RFP is closing tomorrow. What we found Overland Park and looking at other public or quasi-public assets around the country is all of them use these third-party asset managers. They're experienced, expert hotel consultants that advise on strategic and tactical decisions for the hotel owner. Many private hotels also use the same, and we would expect that asset manager to help us, guide through some of these questions that we've got to evaluate whether they think the Gray study makes sense or not, to help us identify a flag, to help us identify an operator, and those kinds of things. My last point before we turn it over to your comments and questions is with respect to operation or non-operation after we close. We got a bit of breathing room this week, as Freddie mentioned, that we had been anticipating closing would be at the end of July. The seller has pushed that back at this point. We now think we've got about 6 weeks before we close, and it could end up being a little bit longer. If we're going to operate this asset on September 1-ish, we need to have a full and complete operating structure in place, which is not something that we have today. So potentially an operating entity, insurance, we've got to procure a liquor license. That does not come with the asset purchase. We need to figure out how to staff that organization. We need to get bank accounts open. All those things take time. So it's going to be an important bit of direction on that front with respect to whether or not we determined to keep the asset operating after we take it over, because unfortunately, I think that decision may have to come ahead of when that asset manager comes on board, just given the calendar that we've got. So with that, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Freddie and I would certainly be happy to try and answer any questions.
I guess my question is, can we just leave the lights on? It's an old commercial that clearly dates me, so.
Motel 6, though.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right, thanks thanks for the information. I'll turn it back to the city manager, city attorney, before we open it for questions, just to.
Thank you, governing body. Freddie, have you or Jeff had any discussions with the outside community, the hotel community in Topeka, the CVB, those entities about where we're at, and engage them in a discussion?
Yeah, that would be the case, sir. Yes.
And what was reception? I mean, did they have anything to add to this process?
I mean, I think that they do have the best interest for the hotel industry, and they are providing feedback in terms of analyzing the RFP for the asset manager. So I think that during that process, they also will help us determine the steps that we need to take to move forward.
I would just say this to the council. I think you have to ask yourselves, do you want to run a hotel or not? And I think, I don't think if you say you don't want to run a hotel, I actually think there are some other options and some other partners we can engage in discussions with that could flag that hotel. They could manage that hotel. So you're out of the hotel business.
Thank you. Amanda, anything to add?
I would just say, because of how bankruptcy courts work, courts take a while, and so now we don't have to close till the end of September, and that's really nice because it's nice to be able to do multiple things at the same time. So there's lots of options. No one has to make a decision tonight. We can investigate how to setting up an LLC and all of the pieces. So if we need to operate, we can look at the asset managers. We can figure out if maybe somebody else wants to come run a hotel. We can figure out all the pieces. So there are lots of options. These all can be done simultaneously, and there is breathing room. So that is always a great thing.
That is a good thing. So I think what I'd like to do here is ask for questions and comments to start with. I believe the city manager introduced this with the idea that we would give them some direction. It doesn't have to be super specific at this point, I don't think, but definitely a good feeling for where we want to go. And then I know one of the issues for me, and I think it's probably similar for everybody, when we have something like this, we're not in the hotel business. The city's never bought a hotel before. This is something totally new. We're not building a street or renovating City Hall or something like that we're used to doing. We need information. We need to know what's going on, and we can't just go like a couple of weeks and then get something at the last minute. Not that that's happened, but just looking forward as a lot of these decisions, critical decisions, are being made. Ultimately, this body is going to have to decide what we do. And we've got to have enough information up front that we can make good decisions along with the staff, with input from everybody that's here that's worked hard on this. But it's going to be critical. So I think, again, let's have some comments if there are any questions for Freddie and Jeff and whoever. And then let's try to give some direction as we close out this discussion. So questions, I'm just going to start over here. Councilwoman Hiller.
Okay, thank you. A couple of big questions, I think. When this proposal was brought to us, the study that you're discussing was mentioned, but there was a whole lot more in that study than just buying a hotel. And that had to do with the fact that we wouldn't even have been looking at it if it wasn't for the Expo Center, and which we jointly with the county just invested $50 million in, and we need to keep going. Discussion that it was really to have this hotel thrive, that the Maynard Conference Center was run down, and that the county, of course, the county's managing the Expo Center, the county has the Maynard Conference Center, and there was also discussion that if we wanted to turn it into finally, you might say, a major convention center, that even a second hotel, I guess maybe a little different, maybe suites instead of just rooms or something, was going to make the whole complex work. To me, those are critical, perhaps, in terms of who you would even hire as the asset manager. I'll turn that into a question, but also whether the county's at the table. The immediate questions then would be, if we own it, but we're going to hire somebody to manage it, does it matter what that vision is, who we would hire to do the best job that we need as an asset manager? And the second question is, have we been talking to the county? We kind of stepped in just to help them out. I don't mind quit claiming it right over to them if they're ready to do their project personally. And so, have we talked to the county, and would it matter who we get as an asset manager based on the plan?
So I think with respect to the asset manager, you're hiring somebody who actually knows something about managing hotels, unlike the collective group here, right?
Absolutely.
And that person is not going to be managing the hotel. They're going to be advising you on what the right strategy is for management. They can advise you on whether they think it makes sense to do this sort of campus complex and try to double down by adding another hotel on the same site and restaurants and those kinds of things. I mean, we've watched that corridor not develop over, with the exception of significant public investment, over 30 years. I've got a question of whether that works or not, but again, I'm not a hotel expert. So, I mean, I think getting that person, company, whatever it is, on board ASAP is going to arm you with the information that you can feel comfortable with. I mean, we are collectively working at this point with a third-party written report, which I think was thorough and well done. It was 80 or 90 pages, as I recall, and had quite a bit of information. Not a whole lot of detail on that campus concept, other than a mention that wouldn't it be nice kind of thing. What I found interesting from the Gray Studies asset mix is it didn't seem to rely very heavily, not asset mix, but occupancy mix, is it didn't seem to rely very heavily on that conference traffic. I mean, if you think about the statistics I gave you, and I can go back to those really quickly, it surprised me a little bit when I read it. Excuse me. So 20% retail transient travelers, folks just stopping off I-70. 20% corporate accounts. I think what they're really talking about there is probably folks associated with state government. But it could also be Hills or Blue Cross and Blue Shield, those kinds of folks. 30% social leisure, so that would be family coming to visit, weddings, those types of things. 15% corporate and social events, so that's the league's annual conference, that's the sorority and fraternity kind of events, those types of things. And then 15% group association events, that might be an insurance agents group or something along those lines. So not a whole lot. It's not like the Expo or Manor are driving, at least according to the Gray study, the 60 or 70% of the expected occupancy here. So don't want to downplay that. Clearly having that asset attached is going to be important. But again, I think the asset manager is going to be really critical to helping guide the city as to whether those additional sort of growth ideas associated with a second hotel, outside restaurants, make sense. I'm guessing that's something that you all probably don't want to do yourselves, right? So that might be something that the asset manager could help put together an RFP to seek third-party developers to come in and be responsible for that development.
So what you're saying is that any asset, it'd be different if you're just managing a hotel that's somewhere on Wanamaker, let's say,
Yeah.
versus a hotel that's part of a complex already that has at least a frontline discussed potential to be really big.
Yeah.
So any asset manager, we wouldn't want to be like lean toward the convention center types, or they're all the same?
I don't think they're all the same, but I think that that information will probably come through the overall bids and the information within each packet. So I think that that can be definitely evaluated
Well, I would
within the
certainly-
process.
It just seems like we should lean toward that type of experience and expertise and somebody who wakes up in the morning liking to do that.
And folks that have expertise bringing assets out of trouble or distress. Yes. And that was, both of those were questions in the RFP.
Okay. And then the second question was whether we've talked to the county yet.
No conversation with the county since, I think, probably Steve Wade ahead of the auction.
I guess I think that that would be really good to do before we take another step. Hopefully, it could happen quickly, but since I don't know if they've got anything pending with the idea of closing it or not, where that's critical, any of those things, and that very short term as well as just that big picture. Give them a chance to get on board. Apparently, they were ready to go, and then some things happened right at the last minute. But if all those other pieces that got them all the way down the aisle are still there, and maybe I'm tiptoeing into executive session type material, but anyway, it seems like it's worth it to talk to them. Thank you.
I would point out they've not reached out to us either, so that may say something.
Well,
I
we
don't
just
know.
committed to the 7.5 million, even so. Thanks.
They're just across the street, by the way. It's a short trip.
Right.
I'm just going to go around the room here and give everybody an opportunity. If you don't want to speak, great, or if there's follow-up questions afterwards, be happy to entertain that as well. Or Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, are you on? I don't see her, so we'll.
I am.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
on.
Okay, we can't see you here, but would you like to speak on this topic?
I would not.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz? Okay. Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As you gentlemen know, when we first got into this, a person came that wanted to operate the hotel. And I can tell you, if we did not have a person that wanted to operate the hotel banging down our door to do it, I would not have voted in favor of it. So I guess just so there's no misunderstanding about my position on this, I have no interest in the city renovating or operating a hotel. And I appreciate all the work you guys have done. This is not a criticism. Please don't take this as a criticism of you guys. It's just, that's what, as you guys know, that's what we were, that's the pretenses of which we bought this property. I will stand by our decision to buy it. I think it was the right thing to do, given the importance of that, I guess, that strategic asset and its position in our city. But the city, frankly, cannot do renovation near as efficiently as the private sector can do with all of our rules and processes that we go through. So I would not be in favor of that. However, Mr. White brought up the importance of operating it, and I do believe the existing operator has offered to stay on operating it for an extended period of time. I don't know what that is, maybe up to a year?
Nothing official, and I guess I have a logistical question. Who is the existing operator, right? That entity.
Right.
That entity is in foreclosure. They are disposing of the asset. We're not acquiring the entity. We're acquiring the asset, right? So
Correct.
we're going to have to create a new entity
Sure.
and recreate all the systems that they have. So we could presume for a second that all the people come over, which would be fantastic, but there's still a lot of logistics just to get a company set up,
Sure.
as you
So and this is just what I was told, and I believe Mr. Mowen does have a letter that they sent on Monday maybe, or Sunday.
A
or
proposal, yes.
Yes, okay. And my understanding is they are a third party that they only operate hotels for people under receivership. So they are not interested in doing that long term, but in my opinion, if they're there and they're operating it, why wouldn't we keep them in place and their employees? What I understand is with the pandemic and everything, obviously things were terrible there for a couple of years. but they went in and stabilized operations. As a matter of fact, I think if this report we see is right, last year they only, I mean, they were in the red by $56,000 all year. If this report is right. And this year, and in 2019, before the pandemic, it made $730,000 profit. So the pandemic came and changed this. It's not that there's
Sure.
anything terrible with the hotel. So I guess my opinion is we don't need to go in and make wholesale changes right away in this. And depending on what this proposal is and how much we have to pay them, which I have not seen, I think that would be a worthwhile thing, because the whole reason we did this was to maintain it and preserve it for Topeka and Shawnee County. And I can tell you, I got a panic call last week from someone who said, we have this big convention book there. We're being told it may shut down. And I'm like, that's the last thing we want, is uncertainty in the market and people canceling events. I mean, the only reason we did this was to make sure it stays here and that events happen. So my opinion is keep it operational. And once it's renovated, don't shut it down to renovate. I mean, we've all been to hotels, right, that are undergoing renovation. And this is, I think, 9 floors. Floor 9 is being redone. Floors 1 through 8 are being, or 2 through 8, I guess, are the rooms. You just don't shut down an operating business because it goes from a loss of, $56,000 to a loss of $1 million or more every year. You have it shut down, I would guess. Plus you lose your staff.
Yeah, three quick thoughts there. The last data we had on a trailing 12-month basis, financial data showed a loss of about $160,000. So that was like a May to April set of data. So you're looking at a calendar year, but the last set of 12 months that we had showed a loss higher than that.
Okay.
On the renovation wall operation, I think we're going to learn a lot with the systems assessment. If the electrical has to be redone, we may not have the opportunity to keep it operational while we're redoing electrical or plumbing or whatever. We don't know that. We will have an entity, a company in place soon that will help us figure that out, right?
And I guess on that point, I think we might be getting the cart before the horse a little bit, because we're hiring somebody to go in and look at it, and then later on we're going to decide on an asset manager. Well, I'd think a person. Go ahead, Mr.
No,
White.
but simultaneously, these things are two trains running on 2 tracks at the same time.
I guess my thought would be, though, if I'm a guy who works in the hotel business, which this asset manager presumably would be,
Sure.
I probably have guys on my staff that do this exact type of thing, right? Or I have a company, a vendor I normally work with that, does architectural, structural, or whatever type of investigations. And I feel like the city may be asking for information that might not be germane to what an asset manager might need. That's only my thought. I guess I just prefer it was the other way around. We pick the asset manager, then they help us. What do you need? Do you need something else?
Yeah. We bought an asset as is that's 25 years old, and we know there hasn't been any major maintenance in 5 years based upon the diligence information that we have there. So, the idea was trying to get information about what the level of replacement or repair would need to be on the most expensive systems as soon as we possibly could would be important to all these other decisions as well.
Okay. Well, that's
I guess third point is just thinking about math for a second. And if we're looking at $700,000 in income available for debt service, or $700,000 in net profit from that facility in a year, and we're asking a private developer to come in, we can put our money in an account overnight and we can earn 5% today, right? So what's the expected return for a private developer to come in and put equity at risk in a hotel that is just coming out of foreclosure auction? I don't know, pick a number. I'm going to pick 10% because that makes my math easy. But I don't think that's necessarily too high. It might even be too low. You all can sort of draw your own conclusions about what level of return it would take to induce you to invest in a similar asset. So if we want to get a 10%, again, I'm going to make my math easy, 10% cash on cost return, then $700,000 a year in net operating income would imply a permitted investment of $7 million, right? Well, that was just the acquisition cost. We haven't even begun to renovate yet.
Right.
So my concern is that while none of us particularly want to be in the hotel business, that to make this asset valuable and sustainable and important in this community is going to take a level of investment that's going to turn an expected return for a private developer into one that's just not remotely interesting to them.
Right.
So I want to be clear that we may all feel exactly the way that you do with respect to not wanting city funds to go in this, not wanting the city to be involved in managing it. But I think there's an economic reality that it's going to be particularly challenging to attract private investment given, and again, not a hotel expert, I'm relying on Gray Hospitality, which is, that produced a pro forma that showed what the expected returns could be. And we saw that in 2019, as you mentioned, where the returns, I'm sorry, the performance of the hotel in 2019, pretty good year for hotel pre-pandemic, about $700,000, probably not far off.
Right. And Deputy Mayor, I promise you, I will keep this short because I know we got like 8 more people that might want to talk here. You'll yield your time to me. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. I guess the only thing, again, I'm not saying at all the city shouldn't have an ownership position in this. I just simply don't want the city to be doing the renovations and doing that. I mean, that's, you gave like 4 different, Jeff, like 4 different flavors of different things.
Yeah.
I think, the city's going to have to be involved at some point as an investor. I just don't want the city handling the renovations because, again, frankly, we're good at doing public works projects. We're not good at operating a private business. I mean, we'd go in and have 400 employees in there. You know, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't, the city model of doing things doesn't work in a service industry, I don't think, of like this. But the last thing I'd say, though, is, and I don't understand from the actuals how the property taxes varied so much, how it was almost $500,000 in 2019. But I'd point out that even if the 150 you said is right, that's after paying property tax of $353,000. So it's like, it's actually working right now. It's paying its way. So I guess my point is, let's not shut it down and eat the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, you've got an asset that's producing 37% occupancy at the moment.
But yet it still covers its costs, so.
Almost.
Yeah.
I mean, $150,000 short of that over the last rolling 12.
Yep.
With no investment in the asset. That's the other concern is how long is that sustainable before something expensive breaks?
It's shown about $500,000 in O&M, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, okay.
Yeah.
I know we got other
Yeah.
people. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman. Before I recognize Councilman Kell, feels like we're jumping to a lot of conclusions before we know what we really got. And every time we say, let's shut the hotel down or come up with a scenario that's going to force us to shut the hotel down. I mean, back to what Councilman Emerson said, we did this because the convention business is critical to this community. And we've got to figure out what we've got, what is the best way to bring that hotel back with the least impact to the convention business in Topeka, Kansas. So I guess I'd just caution, I know if everything was equal and money was no problem and we didn't have to worry about that, we'd shut that baby down, renovate for 6 years, and we'd put the best flag we could buy out there. We're not going to be able to do that. We're going to have to do something that recognizes that we've got to keep conventions coming. Means working with the county, means a lot of things, but just a cautionary note there. Councilman Kell?
Some of the questions I may have may be simple, but unfortunately I was out of town that day that the special meeting happened, and I was in the middle of nowhere, so I had no signal. But this may also be good for the people watching to understand. First off, I think we need to have a major collaboration with the county and even have possibly add that on to the Stormont Vale Event Center Advisory Board or create its own board. Are the ballrooms going to be ours or are those the county's?
There is, so the hotel itself has, I want to say about 10,000 square feet of conference space. Most of those are smaller rooms. I think there's one larger room. But I think if you think about going to a conference, you're thinking about probably being in Manor, which is what the county owns.
Okay. So, all right. So I think our biggest things that we need to do is like, I even think we may even try to figure out a way to have a meeting with the county commissioners and ourselves together and have a special meeting like that to try to maybe go over some of this stuff. But again, like we were talking about the homeless, we need to have a short-term plan, we need to have a long-term plan, and this is something that kind of needs to be done quickly because, you know, just like with me missing the meeting, it was boom, 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 we were moving so fast that a special meeting got thrown in the middle of nowhere. So our biggest thing, I think, is we need to establish someone to start going in and working with the staff and asking them questions. What's worked the last couple, you know, if they've worked there so many years, what's worked, what's not worked. Let's not try to reinvent the wheel and go get now another consultant to come in and tell us what's going to work in Topeka, what's not. If we already have the staff there that knows what's worked and what hasn't worked, because I've been in and out of that hotel for different things with conferences, with working with the football team and with the fair board. And there's things that they've just kind of let go and just, they don't even have their little cafe or whatever they had before. And we need to look at things that are going to help drive in business. And then like the outside restaurant idea, I think is a perfect idea because it doesn't just help the restaurant. It gives, you know, somewhere else for Topeka to go. We need to look at long-term things more. Those day conventions aren't going to sell a hotel room. Those 2 or 3 day long conventions, the events. Thank goodness that we're finally starting to get some more events back at the Expo Center like Dirks Bentley. That's going to create, you know, space usage. But if we just aren't working with the county to get in events, you know, having Oakview, which is their manager of the Expo Center, bringing in those long-term events, those multi-day events, those late day evening events, we're not going to have that. So like I said, we need to look at what's going to fill those rooms and start going that way. I think all of us need to take a tour of the facility. And maybe whatever staff member that gets appointed to kind of oversee this goes through with some of the hotel staff now and looks at, okay, what's the big things, what's the pros and cons, and then that person can take us on a guided tour of what's going on and see for our own eyes. You know, we just need to look at, after that, what's going to be a good cost estimate, you know, have different plans of rough cost estimates of doing certain things. I know it's been about 3 years since I stayed there when fair was going on, and the room to me wasn't bad. Probably the biggest thing that needs to be is new carpet and touch up walls here and there. So I don't think we need to maybe really jump into the deep end on stuff. But the two biggest things are we need to get with the county and we need to start developing that short and long-term plan as quickly as possible. So we're not, you know, just stuck with something that we're not having any clue what we're doing with, especially with how in 6 months we may have a major turnover of council people. So if they come in with no plan and they're trying to learn themselves, this may turn into a huge debacle if we don't start moving forward now, because September 1st is going to come up on us before we know it, and we only have 4 meetings until then. So I think we really need to look at having someone appointed right now to start the process for us on some of those things. And if it's wasted time, at least we had a plan in place. You know, if someone wants to come in and take over and say, hey, we'll do everything for you, great. But at least if we had someone in the city right now that their focus is at, we're at least heading in the right direction.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, a couple quick comments, if I might. The Gray study has a number of pages, 3, 4, 5 pages on the renovation plan. So I would encourage you, there's a resource there to see the logic of what they came up with respect to renovation strategy. The other caution I'd note is sort of like when you purchase a house, you sign the purchase contract, and then there's a period of time before you close on the house. We don't own the hotel yet, right? We've signed a purchase contract, and so even the ability to go take a tour requires the permission of the current hotel owner. So there are some things that we're able to do from a distance, standing at the property line and looking in. Everything else that involves sort of interaction, we need the consent of the current owners to do. They've been, I think it's fair to say, reasonably cooperative so far. We had conversations about, could our system assessment engineer get access to the building? You know, they've said, sure, coordinate with the hotel manager. So just want to provide caution there that we do need to respect the fact that we don't own this asset yet.
Honestly, I think they need to play ball. If they're not willing to play ball, then we may have to relook at this whole entire thing, because we're trying to do something that is much larger. I mean, we need that time to, in essence, take over. It's not going to be like March or September 1st happens. What do we do? Are staff going to show up? Are they going to know what's going on? We have to, like I said, put someone in charge of that to be able to start answering their questions, start answering our questions, start answering the citizens' questions on this, because it's an $8 million investment that we have no clue what's going on past today on it, I feel like. So it's something where if you went to other places and you're buying something from another, like if someone was coming in to buy it, they're going to come in and start doing their thing more than likely as the transition's happening.
And
So-
to provide you comfort, starting 3 business days after the auction, a team that's been flexible, growing and shrinking of staff and outside consultants, has been meeting every Monday morning to do exactly what you're suggesting. And again, there's some things that we do know, there's a lot that we don't know. And part of that process is sort of muddling through the stuff that we don't know, trying to gather that information to the extent that we can from the seller in some cases, from other folks that have been through this, City of Overland Park, for instance, in some cases. But I do want to provide you with comfort that we're not sitting around and waiting for September 1, that there is a lot of active thinking going on about the dozens of small decisions and things that we need to think about that come along, and we actually keep a tracking list to follow that through the process going forward. So I don't want you to think that nothing is happening. We're sort of waiting around for September.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Nager, would you like to comment?
Sorry, just I with a
Excuse me.
bite. I am perfectly fine. Thank you, Deputy
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you. I want to go back to one of Councilwoman Hiller's questions and clarify. We did have a meeting with the county, short meeting, discuss a number of issues. This was one of them. When I say we, Amanda and I, county commissioner, the mayor was there, and we talked about this subject. And they recognize they have to do some work on Manor Center, but that's where it went.
Part of the issue is we can't meet with the county commission unless it's an open meeting, so they have
But
no manager to meet directly with.
That's why I'm saying an open meeting would be fine to me.
Yeah.
But-
You know,
I do think it's important that I think there is a way for at least the leadership of the governing body to have discussions with the county chair. And I'll let Amanda advise you on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I know Councilman Duncan doesn't have any comments. Oh, wait. Yeah.
That's what happens when you save me for next to last. All right, so Jeff, I want to make something very clear. So please take the first part before I say the second part. I have a lot of respect for the work you do for us as it relates to our investments in bond counsel. My frustration in listening to this conversation tonight is that you yourself continue to remind us this is not your background, your expertise, and yet many of your answers are very definitive. And I guess my frustration in that is I understand providing it's the council, but it's not your background and you don't have some of the context. This is the first time we as a body have any conversations with you. To this day, if we asked you, what are you as a governing body willing to give up in this process? How that impacts the decision. It's part of my issue with the Grays study is they didn't come to the city and say, well, you should probably do this plan because this is what on the books makes sense financially. Well, for all they know, the city, we have economic incentives that can be factored into this that we could use. We may be willing to give up some of that purchase price if we know it brings in, right? None of those are factored into this conversation. And this is not a fault of yours. Goes back to the cart before the horse comment earlier. We have an RFP closing tomorrow for an expert in this field to help answer some of these questions, and yet we're having a conversation as if we've already made some of these decisions. I know that's not totally true, the decision's not made, but that, if you're the public watching this, that's what it sounds like, is that, well, the recommendation from staff is close the thing down and put a bunch of money into it, and then let's make it work like Overland Park. We fail to mention in any of this conversation or the reports that Overland Park is going to spend $6 million of transient guest tax money this year to continue to operate that hotel. We don't have that backstop like they do. So I'm not trying to denigrate the work you're doing and what you've come. I just feel like we are having way too many conversations without all of the global information by bringing in this next expert. And I do think, since the question is, what do we want? I think it's clear we don't want to close it. We need to make that work. And I know that's a lot of work for staff and people to create the LLC and open up new bank accounts. And these people may become city employees, and there's a whole lot that goes with that. But I think we need to keep it open. I can test some of it is accurate. If you look through those numbers you read in that Gray report, that actually 50%, a little over 50% of those numbers are related to events directly related to Stormont Vale Event Center. Not only that, if you go talk to Visit Topeka, they will tell you that there are a handful of contracts we have right now that bring in tens of thousands of people that if we close that hotel, we lose kids wrestling, we lose some rodeos, we lose some dog shows, and that will not come if there's not a hotel connected. That's not factored into some of this analysis of what the economic impact to the city collectively, sales tax and whatever that generates from bringing those folks in. So those are some of my frustrations listening tonight is I understand the information is important, and it's already been said, but I'll repeat it. We entered into this with a very clear concept that we would not be the long-term owners of this. We were going to save it from some jerky person who wanted to come in, strip the thing down, take all the assets, run it for 2 years until they couldn't make a dollar, then clear it out of that $5 million that it's worth and leave town. And we didn't think we could afford that. We do view it as a turnkey to some degree that we can make happen if we're creative, if we're willing to talk to the right partners. And my last comment and my biggest concern about this conversation, so I guess I want to put this out in the universe is, I do believe there are some private entities who are willing to talk to us about taking over long-term ownership and reconstruction of that hotel. And I don't want them to listen to tonight's conversation and think, well, the direction they're going to end up is they're going to end up and operate it, so why have the conversation with them? I do not want to shut that door. I want to make sure that the world knows that door is wide open, and we are willing to have that conversation. So that's what I have to say in my first. I told you, don't wait to be next to last, right? That's.
I did it on purpose because it's kind of entertainment. Councilwoman Hofer? All right. Last call for anybody that would like to make comments. Seeing none, I think the direction is pretty clear, City Manager. We don't want to shut it down. We need a plan. We know you're working. We know you guys are working on the plan. We appreciate that. There's a lot of work that has to go into it. I think, the mayor, who's not here, so I'll speak for him, He represents the council in a lot of ways when we're not able to get together. He needs to be in the loop every step of the way in this discussion, as much as he can be. And we need to talk about it here as much as possible. If that's every other meeting, we're having a quick update. If it's in a committee for an update, I don't know what format that takes, but we have got to have some information on this so these misconceptions don't start building behind the scenes. Having said that, we appreciate your work, Freddie, as always. Jeff, you're trying to do something, trying to give us information on something that you pointed it out. Well, none of us know what we're trying to do here, so we do appreciate that. We just need to get a plan and move forward on this. City Manager, any closing comments? All right. And there is no public comment on this, so we will move to our last item, item E. City Clerk will read. Huh? That's public comment, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
D is discussion, or E is discussion related to the City of Topeka 2024 operating budget.
City Manager.
Commissioners, the Chief Financial Officer and our Budget Officer are going to give you your first look at the 2024 budget. And this is kind of a high-level overview to give you a sense of what you're going to be looking at in a more detailed discussion next week. So, gentlemen.
Thank you. Deputy City Manager, members of the body. Once again, like as mentioned by the City Manager, this is just a brief overview of the proposed 2024 budget. This will be slightly different than what you have seen before. So I think that it is important for us to brief you on those differences and how the outcome-based budget affects the overall budget for the city.
Thank you, Freddie. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, governing body. Before I jump into the budget presentation, I do want to give a quick shout out to the staff that helped really compile this book together. Like Freddie said, it's a bit different than it has been in years past. We're really pleased with how it's turned out, and we're excited about the conversations that it's going to be able to generate. So just by name, Mary Bisbee, Jessica Venverlo, and Raul Guevara were all instrumental in putting this together. So I'm very appreciative of them, and be sure to thank them for the great-looking budget book. So when we jump into the budget, again, as City Manager said, a broad overview this evening. And so just looking by the numbers, the total budget is about $372 million. Our general fund budget is about $116.2 billion. So again, with outcome-based budgeting, we're trying to look a little bit deeper at the services that the city provides rather than just departments as a whole. So you'll find 101 different services in the budget. And new staff positions, we have 27 new FTEs from the 2023 budget. We are working on a document that we will provide to you next week at the workshop that has a detailed list of all of those increases along with their explanations, along with each of our presentations that we go through over the next couple of weeks. We will go in great detail about the FTEs that were added or that we're looking to add. And then, of course, it has the major general fund revenue sources there with franchise fees, property tax, and sales tax. So again, outcome-based budgeting, we're looking at services rather than departments. And so we've taken our normal departmental budgets and we've looked at the best way to break out those costs by the services provided. And we've done that based on talking with departments about how much time FTEs spend doing a particular service, along with taking some of those major costs that are associated with certain services and putting those costs there. It's also organized by the strategic priority outcomes that were established earlier in the year, housing, community appearance, and growth. We also did put the fourth one of operations, where those things that we do as a city that we are required by law or by other reason to do, to provide services to the community. So you'll see that fourth category of operations. So if we break out the services into each of the categories that they go to, it looks a little bit like this. Again, this is our best estimate about how much we're allocating to each of these. This isn't a reflection on what we deem the most important of the categories. This is just a reflection of what our current city services are doing in regards to supporting these outcomes. And obviously there's different debates that we'll be able to have later about how much we should be contributing to a certain outcome versus another one. But again, this is just kind of how it shakes out at the moment. So this is an example budget page. Again, a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. And so just going over a couple of the pieces in it. For each page, you'll see the service description and the type of service. And so we defined 3 different types of services. So this one is street maintenance. It's a direct service to community appearance. That's a big thing that citizens look to. That's a big thing that we look to when we're determining how community appearance, which again is one of our priority outcomes, how our community appears with street maintenance. So a support service is the second type of service. This is something that a little bit more indirectly contributes to the outcome. And then we have a service type of operational, which again is just the regular operations that we do as a city. So you'll see the service budget along with its responsible department. In most budgets, you're used to seeing 2 years of actuals, last year's budget, and then the proposed budget. Since this is the first year that we've broken out costs this way, you'll only see what the 2024 budget is listed as. We do have all of the historical information. So in the back of your budget book, there's department pages. So you can still make that apples to apples comparison between years looking just at departments. And then of course at the very back of the book is the complete line item budget. So we want to make sure that those questions are answered. We can address where increases occur. But when we're looking at these service budgets, we're not able to make that comparison because this is the first year we've done this. And then of course there's the accomplishments, goals, and performance measures section. So this is the timeline for the budget, and there's some hard copies that we'll pass out to you as well that gives a little bit more detail for each of these dates. So as I mentioned, there's 101 different services in the budget. We won't cover every single one throughout the budget presentations. So we've highlighted which ones we will cover so that if there are ones that governing body members have questions about or want us to address, we can do that at that time. So on this piece of paper that you're getting, you'll be able to see when departments are going to be up presenting for a particular service. So again, this would be the opportunity to ask general questions to that department if you have any. So next week is our budget workshop where we'll go ahead and we'll get started with the growth and housing outcomes, and we'll continue on. August 29th, we identified as a special meeting if needed. With the schedule, how we have it currently laid out, we anticipate being able to get through everything, but we did want to identify that in case there is opportunity or need to have further budget discussions on that date. So with that, we will take any questions that you have on the 2024 budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question, back on the first slide, the additional FTEs, is that total, that is not FTEs for positions that aren't filled? That doesn't include positions that aren't filled currently?
So that's a combination of positions that after the 2023 budget was passed, there were some positions that were created and are currently filled. So it includes those positions along with positions that are being requested for the 2024 budget period that have not been posted or filled yet.
Okay, thank you. Questions? I am not seeing any. We thank you for the overview. The lack of questions is probably because we're tired, but not because it wasn't a great presentation.
6 slides.
You know it? You're right. Thank you. City manager, anything else on the budget?
No, sir.
All right. I believe we have made our way through section number 5. We are on to public comment. We do have one person signed up, Carol Babcock. Carol, please approach the podium. You have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carol Babcock, and I'm a member of the Affordable Housing Committee of Topeka Justice, Unity, and Ministry Project, JUMP. We are here again to implore you all to move forward with the next step in utilizing the AHTF to call together the Affordable Housing Review Committee so they can begin issuing requests for proposals to housing developers. We would like to thank City Councilman Spencer Duncan for providing an update regarding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund at the June 20th City Council meeting. We're glad to hear that work is being done to update the trust fund ordinance. These are great next steps. But we're here to ensure that this governing body does not forget that calling together the review committee is a crucial step that needs to happen immediately following this ordinance update. The review committee's purpose is to ensure that affordable housing initiatives get the necessary funding and resources that they need. Their expertise and oversight are vital in identifying ideal projects and implementing strategies that will make a meaningful impact on the lives of our citizens. The longer we delay the activation of this committee, the more individuals and families will find themselves on the brink of homelessness. More than 10,000 households in Topeka are living with relatives or friends, or paying more in rent than they can afford, or living in unsafe conditions. It is your responsibility as representatives of the community to ensure that the most vulnerable among us are not left behind. If we want to ensure that the homelessness crisis does not get worse in Topeka, we need to begin utilizing every tool at our disposal, especially the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. More shelters are not enough on their own to address this crisis. What we truly need is more affordable housing. We again invite you all to imagine the positive ripple effects that can emanate from activating the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Families will have stable homes, allowing children to focus on their education, parents to concentrate on their employment. Affordable housing can result in more economic development for our city, which in turn would mean more money going back into the city to help you all further finance other crucial activities. Have a minute. You can demonstrate your commitment to equitable and affordable housing by activating the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and convening the review committee as soon as possible. The time for action is now. JUMP has a seat on the Affordable Housing Review Committee, and we will continue to be present at every city council meeting every week until this review committee is activated. We recognize the city is working to update the trust fund ordinance, but regardless, we will continue to show up until the truly important step of convening the committee is underway. When that step happens, it will truly show Topeka residents that affordable housing in our city is really a top priority.
Thank you. All right, announcements, City Clerk.
Okay, so we have a meeting on the July 25th. It's a special meeting. We have one presentation on the homelessness in Topeka, the path to innovation. We have one action item. It's a resolution for the Topeka Fire Department lease purchase agreement for portable radios, and then we will continue discussion on the operating budget.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you, governing body. I have a few. So first thing I want to say is, and you've heard me say this before, I'm extremely proud of what our city crews did. They stepped up, they got out in the storm, they were out in the storm. They were out there many, many hours, and they're still working many, many hours in your neighborhood. So what I would tell you is I believe they're making their first pass across the city this week. Second pass will be next week. People need to put the branches at the curb. No limbs or branches will be picked up on private property. And they need to be on the curb no later than Monday morning at July 24th. And if our citizens, if you would just direct the calls you get, and our citizens will go look at our social media pages, we'll have all that information on the social media. Public Works and Utilities Citizens Academy, this fall, they had this fall, they will have 2 additional citizen academies, one for fire, one for police. I think the chiefs are going to team teach it, so you'll want to sign up for that and kind of see how that works. They're accepting applications for those academies. The community needs to sign up. It's a great opportunity. It's an opportunity that I always wanted to do and never did get to do in the city I was in. So you can go to the city's website again and sign up. And then we had the Country Stampede. We had Fiesta Topeka kicked off today. Those are large events in our community, and people need to go out and enjoy it. I was fortunate enough to be up here, watch the Fiesta parade. That's a long parade. So, and what people don't know is that is what, 90 years old? That Fiesta is 90 years old. Now, that's an institution in the community, unbroken, and it's something that everybody can celebrate. I appreciated being invited to the meeting that Councilwoman Avia Alcala coordinated last night. There were a number of us there. Sorry, it's late. And there were a number of staff people there. There was a room full of people. And here's what I walked away thinking, is there's an opportunity here, no matter how small, how working together, we can get into Oakland, into your district, and maybe really start developing some plans, developing solutions, working with the residents on the issue of homelessness. So I just kind of walked away with that. It's something that has to mature. I owe you an apology. Homelessness is a issue that can touch me for a lot of ways. Now, I probably shouldn't have put my finger on the table, and I apologize for that. That's not, but I think it's important. I've heard about the low barrier beds since I've been here. I just think it's important. I hear it from the public all the time, or we go do that. I hear it from some strange circles. There is no plan. I've never been able to find the former city manager's plan on homelessness. There may have been discussion about low barrier beds, but it wasn't with you, and you didn't have it. And it is a policy issue that if you want to discuss it, you should discuss it. Here's what I do think. I think it's time that we do have a discussion, and we continue this discussion with our citizens about where do you have the greatest impact on homelessness. And I'm going to tell you, we don't need to run the programs. You have a lot of social service agencies here. If you keep your budget the way it is, I believe in contracting. I believe in putting out a proposal, having people come and explain that to you, and putting some seed money out there to qualified social service agencies that can make an impact on the problem. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. No apology necessary on my part. Councilman Duncan noticed that there's been a gentleman sitting on the front row. Sir, did you sign up to speak?
I called his office trying to find out how I could address our situation, and I'm just waiting. We need help in our community.
I tell you what, could I ask you to visit with the city manager? We're going to break here in just a minute for an executive session. If you could visit with him, he'll make sure that you get directed to whatever you need. If you do want to speak publicly, you're certainly welcome to do that next week. Just call the city clerk's office.
That's what I was trying to do all week. I was trying to.
She'll get you the number. She'll get you the number, and yeah.
I was over next door yesterday and today trying to do something here.
You know, it's up to the council. If you make an exception to the rule and let the gentleman speak, we will give you, sir, a few minutes. Motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Come on up, sir. Yeah.
I live in a trailer court on Kansas Avenue and 24 Highway. The trailer court has been owned by people from out of state that don't care about us. I've been there 12 years, and they try to get rid of the long term so that they can raise the rent, and new people, no benefits whatsoever. They raised the rent 2 years ago. Akala was there. We went through all this, but they somehow managed to not do anything and make things worse. The main problem was that the trees are overgrown, they're old, and they're dangerous. And it can't be bought more so as you could look at it today, rather than what happened 2 years ago. This is real. Life and limb is in danger. My trailer was hit by these trees. These trees are dangerous. They're dead. Some of them are dead. They've been marked for removal, yet they won't do it. The tree companies give them an estimate of $100,000. They shut all that down, So here we are living with that. My trailer was hit so hard, we thought we was goners. This tree's 150 feet tall and dead, and here's a 2,000-pound limb hitting my trailer. A few more inches, it could have took out my son. And cars have been totally demolished this week. There's no thing to clean it up. They're saying, well, if you don't have insurance, you're not covered. Nobody wants to insure a trailer, and if they was to fix the trees, we wouldn't have to worry about that. But these outside owners, they never meet with anybody. They come in there and then they find out that the infrastructure is trash. The groundwater level is raised up. All the pads are sinking. The roads are trash. The trees are a danger. That's the most dangerous thing that we have to worry about right now. And the other night when that storm hit, and all that damage, it scared the crap out of me. And a lot of other people too. And 2 years ago, when this was gone, we threatened them with a class action suit, and they immediately tried to evict everybody. They filed false charges against me with the city. It cost me $1,500 for an attorney to fight an eviction notice for a trumped-up charge. And then I got cancer and I couldn't do it anymore. And I don't know what happened to the managers. They run the managers off. You know, there's been 5 managers in the last 2 years. And now the original managers that started all this crap are back. And so they're not going to do anything, you know. And I don't know where else to go, what to do. I can't afford to leave. I can't, everything I've worked for is right there. I'm 82 years old, I can't do anymore.
Sir, we appreciate your comments. Again, city manager is going to get with you and figure out what avenues the city can take to help your situation. So you got the top guy sitting right there that's going to talk to you, and let's see where that goes. Thank you for coming, sir. All right, we'll move on to council comments. Councilwoman Hofer.
I guess the only thing I want to say is I was one of those people that lost power this week or last Friday. Thank you to Evergy and all the crews they brought in from Kansas City, wherever they came from. I think everyone in my neighborhood is finally back with power, so I appreciate all their hard work.
Very good. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. I too want to shout out again to staff, all the partners, also all the neighbors. And we had full trees down by the roots across the street from me and half a block the other way. And in both cases, neighbors came running out with saws and just said, let's figure out what we can do. In my case, one was leaning over Lane Street and one over 10th Street. And they just did it. And 2 guys from Stormont who had a log chain came and pulled one of them. And then the crews came along, the city crews and everybody else as well. We did have a section that was out power for 48 hours. People helped each other. And I really, made me really proud to live here with everyone pitching in. Other than that, Fiesta got a great start. Mini Jamaica was new, I think, and then started tonight, the rest of the week. Councilwoman to my right will probably have a little more to say, and online as well. Also, and that at 90 years, we will have our first round of For Our Culture that the Black community has put together that will start the following week and run from Thursday through Saturday. And that's going to be pretty exciting as well.
Great.
Thank
you. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you. Another shout out. It was so bad here in Oakland, but I just got to say, like Braxton, city manager, Sylvia, and all the guys and gals, Travis, John Chardine, all of them, and all of the ones that were there in the street. I mean, they were so cognizant that Fiesta was going to be starting, and because of all the tree limbs and the challenges that could pose for people trying to park and, you know, be blocked by branches, just a voluminous amount, and making it a priority. I even told some of the Fiesta chair people how they really just needed to acknowledge the incredible work that the city did. I mean, it was just above and beyond. I was texting about, you know, different trees down here, streets here, and city manager was just taking them as they came. John was taking them as they came, et cetera, and just the really hard work. So a huge thank you for that. And Sylvia made sure that the bulb outs were all trimmed for Fiesta, and it looks beautiful, Sylvia Davis. So thank you so much for that. It is so much appreciated by the community to know that you helped us prepare for this 90th celebration. Also, I swear to you that John and I saw rotation that evening. We were like out on the porch. We saw some rotation. We were like, duh! And then we ran into the house and we were so afraid, but it was really intense here in Oakland as it was around other parts of the city, and folks really did come together. The Fiesta has started. I will say that I just found out that the Branner Bridge was closed. So for folks that are thinking about coming to Fiesta, please know that I think that that was a decision that the committee and TPD made together. So please know that you're going to have to take some different routes to get there. We had some food this evening and it was absolutely wonderful. The entertainment is going to be, you know, really vibrant and exciting, and everything is just a go. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We are clearly going to exceed our 10 o'clock limit. So I think before we move to Councilwoman Ortiz, I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
So moved.
Motion. Second. And that would be to the end of the business. We
Yes,
have
sir,
it
to the end of the agenda, to the end of the executive session, I guess.
All right. We have a motion and a second. City Clerk?
All right, council members Nager,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dogler,
Yes.
council members Duncan,
Sure.
Hofer,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
No.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Gill.
Yes.
We have 8 yes with Ms. Ortiz voting no. Motion carries.
Does this have to be unanimous?
We could
All right.
change the rule.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you. First, I just want to make it perfectly clear when they are giving kudos, thanks to Sylvia, it's not me, although I could accept it, but I want to make it clear that it's actually Sylvia Davis, who is also one of our Hispanic city employees. So big shout out to Sylvia, and I just wanted to see her smile. I've been wanting to say that for a long time because so many emails come through. It's like, thank you, Sylvia, Sylvia this, Sylvia that. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, but you know, maybe if she wasn't such a good employee, I would do that. But anyway, no, I have not had anything to drink. I just went to the ribbon cutting, and it's fiesta time, and we hope that everybody comes down and has a good time. I tell you, just even with the parade, I've got to see some of my dad's old friends and visit with them. It's a time that our culture kind of connects back, and relatives come in, and it just gets kind of crazy. And want to thank TPD. I drove down there, and yes, the Brannan Bridge was closed. I went over it anyway. And went around the barrier because I had to get there, and I think it's because of the buses that the shuttles coming through, and they're not charging $1, so they're really wanting to get you on the shuttle. I know one of the officers told me, he said, well, I could write you a ticket. I said, you could, and I just hand it to your chief, you know, the chief. So he's like, well, maybe. And so he just started laughing and said, well, maybe I'll just keep my ticket. I said, okay, well, whatever. But I think that's the main thing, is they want to shuttle everybody in and out of there. But fiesta time is always fun. It's always hot, and the food's always great. So looking forward to that. This Friday is the way to work. We're concluding that. Am I correct, Jackie? This Friday, the way to work. And so it's going to be really, really interesting to see these kids and talk to them. The Way to Work program is a program that I spearheaded to get our youth back to work. And so, or get them to work and to understand. It's been a real challenge talking to some of these kids. I know one young man said he was tired. He didn't feel like getting up in the morning and going to work after hanging out with his buddies all night. But we want them to experience what it's really like, and that's what it's all about. And also to understand that they've made a commitment and welcome to the real world. So that's coming to close on Friday. I want to thank my colleagues for the money that's in the budget, and we will be asking for more money because we really need more kids out there. We really do. Last but not least, last week we had, Gibbs League had our camp. We had over 130 basketball players in there, boys and girls, and it was just really, really awesome to go through that, to talk to the kids, to break down the barriers. We did have Sheriff Hill in there this year. And that's one of the goals, is to break down the barriers with the kids and our police department, to let them know our law enforcement, to let them know that they are truly there for them and their safety. So shout out to Gibbs Elite for putting that camp on. And it's been very, very tiring, but it's been very, very rewarding as we are getting all kinds of people that want to donate. It's a free camp that we put on, and we always said we were going to do it for free so that every kid that wants to go can go. Last but not least, I wanted to ask the city manager, is it appropriate that you can, well, if you would help me, and I wanted to know if I could legally, and if it was appropriate that I could get a certificate of completion ready for Henderson Construction on the 7th and Quincy deal, because it is confusing, but we're getting close to that, and I just wondered if there's anything that you could help me with.
So as a captain of the ship, I'm sure we can help you.
Okay, thank you. I would.
That's not a promise.
Now, I need a promise, because I see that it's getting done, and I also was over at 5th and Swagger in that area, and they talked about some of the sewer, big sewer, whatever they're called, going in, storm sewers going in, and I said, who's doing it? And when they told me, I just shook my head. Anyway, that's all I have, Deputy Mayor. Good job, good job.
Thank you. What is the statute of limitations on traffic violations?
And admitted under,
I do not know, but I will find out.
30 minutes.
It's making people back pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah. Councilman?
Deputy Mayor, I had a lot to say, but that was like an hour ago when she started talking, so I forgot it now, so nothing tonight. Thanks.
All right. Councilman Kell?
First off, I want to say happy birthday to my youngest. She turned 17 on Thursday, so I'm almost 1 year away from freedom. Want to say thank you to the city staff for everything they did with the cleanup. The great thing also you saw all over Facebook is neighbors helping neighbors with that situation and working together on getting that taken care of. The Mid-Plains League, which is the summer collegiate team, or league here, pretty much down I-70 from Junction City to Belton. We have a team here in Topeka, the Topeka Warhawks, which I picked up this shirt the other day when I went to their last home game of the season for the regular season. But they start the playoffs on Friday. They got a first round bye. They're the number 2 seed in the league. And they will be playing at Hummer Sports Park at the baseball fields at the Mike Torres sports baseball complex there on the north side of Hummer there. So please go out and support this organization. It's a entertainment option that has turned over several times over the last couple of years here in Topeka. So it's great to support an organization that's willing to put the time and effort into running a team like this. I've ran a team in the Mid-Plains before, and it's a lot of time and effort. And then finally, school's about to start. Please be cognizant of teachers' wish lists. They get a very small budget to spend, and they spend a lot of money on stuff. My wife's a teacher, and I dread walking into Dollar Tree because that bill can run up really quickly. And pay attention to the student supply groups that are out there raising money or asking for supplies to make backpacks for students that need those supplies. So definitely look out for both those groups, and I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Councilwoman Nager?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to also echo the thanks that have been rained down on the city staff. They absolutely deserve it for all of their tenacity, their dedication, their respect of our citizens, their responsiveness and their patience, from the people with boots on the ground to our directors to Ms. Stanley reminding me that, yes, we do have a meeting and you committed to it in January. I really appreciate just the constant guidance and work that they put towards making the city a better place. So that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Duncan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My attorney just texted me and said, remind Councilmember Ortiz that she has the right to remain silent. And if you need counsel, he's available.
But does she ever use that right?
Two things this evening. The first is I made a comment on social media last week after our meeting that unexpected change happens often in government. And it's more how you handle that change sometimes than the change itself. And it has been a roller coaster ride for the employees of this city for the last couple months, from every level, from City Hall all the way down to the folks who are out every day picking up those limbs this past weekend. And I try always very hard not to speak for this council. I only represent myself. But I will say two things that I think everyone probably agrees on based on the conversations we've had, that I think every employee of this city probably knows but needs to hear. And that is, it does matter to us that they have the tools to do their job when we sit up here and make these decisions and tell them, go do this, that we make sure to have it. And we do value every single one of them and the effort that they put into making our vision, which is also part of their vision, happen. And so I just want to thank them for being on that roller coaster, being patient with us as we've worked through some of these issues, and just remind them that, you know, we are appreciative of everything they've done these past couple months, and thank you for running the city for us on our behalf at our direction. So thank you very much to all of them. The second thing I had tonight is he did not pay me to say this, and I figured he wasn't going to say anything, Mr. Deputy Mayor, but Bartlett and West was named by Forbes as one of America's best small employers. They were founded here in 1951. They've remained headquartered here in Topeka. They're now in 7 states. I imagine they will stay headquartered in Topeka for a long time. Here's hoping. But that's an important recognition. It does matter, and I just wanted to make sure that it, as a recognition.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a great company and a great city. That's all I'll say. We do have a need for an executive session. City Attorney?
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 30 minutes for consultation with the city attorney to discuss attorney-client privilege matters regarding contracts and other privilege matters as justified by KSA 754319B2. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers. The following staff are requested to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Attorney Stanley and Interim City Manager, 9 staff.
All right. Do I hear a motion? What? So moved. Wow, that was quick. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. We will take a short 10 minutes. That means exactly 10-minute recess to clear the room, and then we will start executive session. All right, we are back in session. We've finished our executive session. No decisions were made. If there's no further business before the council, this meeting is adjourned.